Opening round of the Champions Cup then, done and dusted. What did you make of it? That's what this video is about. You can drop a comment down below. Great weekend of rugby, but are there still issues for the tournament? Did anyone see the success of the English sides in the opening round? Have we all been underestimating the strength of the Premiership? Loads of different things to get into, as well as specifics about the game, so you can have your say in the comments section. And also, if you want to see more club rugby, more Champions Cup content on the channel, then like the video, spread the message as far and wide as possible, and also make sure you're subscribed to the channel. But let's get into it. So I apologise in advance if your team or the game you're most interested in doesn't get as much of a mention as you would have liked. There was a lot of rugby over the weekend. I'm sure we've all tried to catch as much of it as possible. I've watched a lot of the games, but if I don't necessarily mention one, it's probably just because I haven't been able to see as much of it. But I do have some key talking points that I want to get through and some game-specific stuff as well. So as I said already, I thought it was a great weekend of rugby. There were so many good games, so many good narratives. I love it how you can almost sit back on a Saturday and a Sunday and just watch back-to-back-to-back games. It's great entertainment. But unfortunately, I've got to start with a slight negative, which is the Champions Cup still has its issues, in particular in its structure. So this season, they have changed it from the two conference systems, which I think is a benefit. But they've gone to pools of 6, which, as you'll all know, means 4 teams qualify for the last 16. The 5th ranked team drops into the Challenge Cup. It's only the team that finishes bottom of those pools that goes no further. And that, for me, is an issue because it makes it too easy for teams to qualify for the last 16. Realistically, I think a team could win one game and then pick up bonus points in their other matches. And there's a good chance that that will end up being enough for them to get themselves into a last 16. It's even feasible that a team could lose all of their games. If they were to pick up bonus points in both of those games, they'd still put themselves in contention to go through as well, which I just think is a bit of a flawed system. So that's part of the issue for me, because I think that leads to rotation in team selection. It means we don't see as strong sides. It can be a bit of an imbalanced competition. It just doesn't quite flow as well as it once did. And if you look back at the Champions Cup and the reason that it was once upon a time the jewel in the crown of European club rugby, one of the best tournaments in the world, it was pools of 4. The winners of those pools would progress, and then you had a couple of spots for runners-up, essentially. I think it was it the 6th pool winners went through, and the best second places, there were 2 positions up for grabs to go through to the final 8, to the quarter-final. That was when it was at its best because there was jeopardy throughout it. I don't think we've quite got that at the moment, and I think we're still seeing perhaps the teething problems with South African teams being in the Champions Cup. I think in terms of some of the quality they bring in their sides, and I'll get onto the Bulls in just a moment, they're going to add to the competition. But you look at the Stormers, and John Dobson spoke about this. He didn't want to rotate his team as heavily as he had to, but they had a, 1,600 or 16,000 mile, forget whatever it is, 16,000 mile round trip to get themselves to Leicester and back. Plus they had a match in the URC the week before. They then have a tough game this coming weekend in the Champions Cup. At some point they have to rest and rotate. They were ultimately aiming to try and get a bonus point away to Leicester. It's a shame, but it makes sense the reason they had to do that. They're not the only ones. European teams will do something similar when they travel to South Africa, but that I think continues to be an issue. Is there something in the scheduling of these games we can work out of a way of it working for everyone better? So that's my kind of main gripes. Let's get into the bulk of it. And number 1, English side. 7 wins out of 8 for the English teams. Saracens are the team to lose, and I still think they're in a pretty good position that they could well qualify. No one really expected this. Is this a reflection that the Premiership is stronger than a lot of people think, or is it just an anomaly? Now, on the one hand, I don't think we can purely base it on the basis of one weekend. You look at a number of different games. Harlequins' victory over Racing, Exeter's victory over Toulon, Bristol's victory over Lyon. Those are games that could have gone either way, and this might have a very different complexion. So that's number 1. But I suppose it is worth saying a couple of points here on the Premiership. Number 1, the demise of Worcester Wasps and London Irish means I think the squads on the whole are better in the Premiership because a lot of players from those 3 teams have been spread around the rest of the division. So I think they have, in certain clubs and certain positions, more strength in depth to be able to compete in Europe. And number 2, I just wondered about the fact that the Premiership has no relegation makes it easier for teams. I suppose URC doesn't either, so maybe the argument falls down a little bit there. But I just wonder for the English clubs, they know they don't have the threat of relegation. They're able to put more stock on Europe if they want to. Could be totally wrong there, but you can let me know if you agree or not. So overall, I think it's a small sample size. Great weekend for the English clubs. Maybe a little bit too early to determine whether actually the Premiership is a much higher standard than many of us expected. So let's get into the games. First of all, as I say, I can't touch on all of them. I thought it was a great game on Friday night. Northampton, great win for them against Glasgow. Disappointing, I think, for Glasgow. Didn't really fire a shot until the final quarter of the game, but Northampton are continuing to see the things we've seen them build upon in the Premiership already, which is a better defence and a better set piece. They've always been able to attack really well. They'd often score the most tries in the Premiership, but they concede the most as well. So they look like a more all-rounded team. Brilliant for them to go away on the opening weekend and win. Bordeaux, easy victory over Connacht. Into the Saturday games, Bulls 27, Saracens 16. Now here's a question for you and for the South African watchers. Are the Bulls up there with the favourites for the Champions Cup? Like when we think of the favourites, I think we're thinking Leinster, we think La Rochelle, we think Toulouse. What about the Bulls? They're third in the URC. I really like the balance of the team that they've kind of put together with the muscle up front, and I think they've developed their game in the back line a little bit more as well. I like the direction that club is heading in. And I think this is where it becomes important for them to make sure they continue winning in the pool stages. Even though it's relatively easy to qualify for the last 16, home advantage is going to be key for them, isn't it? Having to go to Pretoria for any team, particularly a European team, in a last 16, in a quarter-final, depending how far they can get in the tournament, is going to be a huge challenge. They are one of those teams that if they can get home field advantage for the knockouts, I think they have the potential to go all the way. That was the big thing that I thought watching it. Are the Bulls one of the favourites? I think particularly if they get home field advantage. Elsewhere, what do we have? Bristol 36, Lyon 34. I mean, this was a bonkers game. 33-10 Bristol were leading. In a sense, it is quite a good example of Bristol this season if you haven't seen too much of them. They have no problem scoring tries, but they have lapses. They have lapses in concentration. They let teams back into the game. And for a moment, it looked like Lyon had stolen it. 1 point lead. Great work from Bristol to go through the phases and line up a drop goal for Sheedy to win it at the death. Completely bonkers entertainment. But I think the Champions Cup presents a bit of an opportunity for Bristol because I think what we've seen already, I know the club will still have aspirations of getting themselves in the top four in the Premiership. I think based upon what we've seen so far this season, that is a tall order. But going back to what I said just a second ago about getting yourself a home last 16, I think they get 20,000 at Ashton Gate if they could get themselves a home last 16 game. Maybe they get one of the real big players in the competition. So having won their opening game, it's a challenge now going away to Bordeaux this weekend, but it's an opportunity, I think, to Bristol to get themselves into the latter stages of the competition. I think they have a more realistic shot at having a good run in this than they do in the Premiership. Bristol fans, do you agree? Do you disagree? Let me know in the comments section. So many more games to get through. Bath 34, Ulster 17. I mean, it's a heck of a win for Bath. Similar to Northampton in a way, in that you feel it's further confirmation of what we've seen in the Prem, which is a Bath team that are more all-rounded. There's a much better balance to this team. They have the forward pack. They have Finn Russell pulling the strings. He's making that back line look brilliant. Joe Thockner-Singer is playing some of the best rugby we've seen him play in a long time. Ben Spencer at scrum half, who's been excellent. Well, throughout his career, he was brilliant at Saracens. He's been excellent the whole time he's been at Bath. He's doing a great job as well. So I think it's an exciting season for Bath. Are they good enough to compete for the Premiership? How good are they to go deep in Europe? We'll wait and see. But there's a lot of Bath fans who deservedly will be very excited about where the club is, given where they have been in the last few seasons, in the last 4 or 5 years, where they've done absolutely nothing. Toulouse hammering Cardiff. I mean, there's a whole video, I think, to be done on the state of Welsh club rugby, but a tough afternoon's work, really, for Cardiff. 52-7 for Toulouse. Toulon 18, Exeter 19. Great win for the Chiefs. Henry Slade, brilliant at the end to kick that conversion to win it under all sorts of pressure. An Exeter team that are youthful. I still think they're further along in their rebuild than most other people would expect it. If you compare it to other sides, I always go to the English sides because I watch more of the Premiership. If you compare it to Gloucester, if you compare it to Bristol, teams that we've thought for the last few years, they need to kick on. They haven't had great seasons. They need to kick on. Exeter have taken that kind of disappointing season where they didn't get top 4 in their stride. A lot of the experienced guys gone. They've got young players coming through, a number of players in that team who quite recently were playing for Exeter Uni, who are now cutting their cloth in the professional game at the highest level. I'm really excited to see where Rob Baxter takes this team, takes Exeter 2.0 if you like, and see where they go in the future. That is a great win for them. It's just the start of the European campaign, but it's an old-fashioned Champions Cup win, isn't it? I think when we think of the Champions Cup, you think of the big scalps on the road, going away from home and winning against the odds. That is exactly what Exeter did. It's a great victory. Munster 17, Bayonne 17. Didn't see a huge amount of the game. I saw Munster will be pretty disappointed. They were leading. They looked comfortable. Bayonne with a pressure conversion. Was it conversion? Penalty? No, conversion, I think. Pressure conversion to get the draw. Munster with a drop goal late on that they missed. Again, I think Munster will still be able to put themselves in a good position to get through. I still back them to get to the last 16. But yeah, I think they'll be pretty disappointed with that. On to Sunday, what have we got? We've got 4 other games here. So Racing 28, Harlequins 31, Sale 28, Stade Francais 5, La Rochelle and Leinster. I've already done a video actually on the La Rochelle and Leinster game, so I probably won't add too many more comments here. What I would say, something I didn't particularly go into in that video, is what's going on with La Rochelle? They're an intriguing one. 2-time European champions, but they're struggling in the top 14. I think they've lost more games than they've won. They've had a little bit of a revival, but still not going great. And I thought, I don't know, there looked to be something wrong in the mentality, I thought, in that game against Leinster. They looked flustered. They were going on at the referee. They didn't like the decisions going their way. That's the thing, I suppose, what's going on at La Rochelle. But a good win for Leinster. Great win for Harlequins, in particular how they held on at the end, that final 20 minutes where they were behind by a fair chunk heading into that period, but were still able to get the job done with a couple of converted tries. Sale, a good win, didn't get the bonus point, which, again, going back to what I said at the start of the video, if we had different rules in this competition, if there were less teams that went through, you might look at that and say that could be crucial for Sale, not getting the try bonus point. As it is, 4 points, plus they go away. I suppose they are in the pool of death, Sale. That is the only thing. What have they got? Leinster and La Rochelle in the pool, Stormers and Leicester, so it's not easy for them actually. Will that bonus point come back to bite them? We'll wait and see. I think most other teams you'd say are probably be okay, but that's maybe a slight question mark over them. And then Leicester and the Stormers, I think the Stormers did great considering the team that they picked. Leicester taking the losing bonus point away from them with the final play of the game, Josh Bassett with the try. So disappointing, I think, the Stormers not to get the 1 point. Leicester job done. Andre Pollard looking excellent, looking all the 2-time World Cup winning fly half that he is in terms of experience and what he's bringing to that team. Jasper Wiese looks great as well. So I think overall there are some really good games, really interesting storylines from the opening weekend of the Champions Cup. And let me know what you made of it. I've kind of gone through the different matches and mentioned a few bits and bobs. Would you like me to do anything differently when it comes to the Champions Cup? A lot of games to get through in the pool stages. That's always a bit of the challenge. I wanted to try and do some sort of overarching umbrella video that took into account a lot of different bits and bobs. Hopefully this has done this, even if it hasn't got into the real detail of some of those games. But as always, let me know in the comments, what do you make of it? What do you want to see differently on the channel? Really appreciate you watching. Well done if you've got this far as well. Appreciate that. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.